Hi everybody, JJ here with ASUS and excited to kick off another ASUS PCDIY live stream. This is actually going to be PCDIY live stream number 40. And so last week we did not have one because if you guys did not actually check it out, we did have our ASUS PCDIY day. It was a jam-packed day to be able to talk about the PCDIY experience, be able to showcase some amazing live builds that we actually did with EK, Mod My Mods, as well as Aru and Noisy Butters. We actually did 3 different systems: an air-cooled system, we did an AIO, small form factor mini ITX-based system, and then a custom water-cooled system. And overall, if you guys are interested in checking that out, make sure to actually check out the stream. I think it's on YouTube, or as well as our Twitch channel. But overall, it was really fun and exciting just opportunity to be able to talk about the PCDIY experience, be able to do some live builds, and hopefully be able to give some of those that are maybe interested in getting to PCDIY a good foundation in terms of actually where to get started and some maybe insights in terms of how to build a PC and just some of the other things that you would want to keep in mind. So overall, it was a really fun and just exciting event that we were able to kick off and be able to do. And hopefully we'll be doing more of those in the not too distant future. So let's go ahead and see who we've got here joining on the stream. Hey, Michael, happy to have you here on the stream. Hello, Dr. Toxico. Hi, Erica. Thanks for letting us know that the audio is good. Overall, we're excited to just, again, be kicking back off the PCDIY live stream. We've got a few things to talk about that are new, not necessarily super in terms of like a wide range of new products to be able to talk about. But even though we're pretty much getting to the end of the year, ASUS is really always going to be busy when it comes to new product releases. And almost about every week we've got new product releases. And so this week we are going to be actually talking about specifically our new TUF Gaming wireless mouse. We actually have not introduced anything specifically in terms of the TUF Gaming peripheral lineup in a little bit, although we did recently, of course, release a gaming headset. And then in addition to that, we're also going to be taking a closer look at our brand new Pbt Keycaps for the ROG Strix Scope series of keyboards. So if you're familiar with those, these are a pretty awesome set of keyboards. They are optical based keyboards. They're using our in-house based switch, and I will be talking about those guys. So overall, pretty cool there. Let's go ahead and take a look, see if we got any questions right here before we get ready to jump into some things here. And also, just as a general recap, outside of course, talking about the TUF Gaming M4 Wireless mouse that we're going to be touching on, as well as those ROG Strix, those ROG Pbt Keycaps, we're also going to be talking about AEMP. And actually, I'll be doing a live demo. I've got my board set up right here. That's the reason why you see that Noctua cooler on that Maximus series motherboard. But this is a very cool, exciting feature that I know that with those of you that are going to consider essentially building a system that's going to be based off of Z690, you're probably wondering about DDR4 to DDR5. And one of the things that sometimes people aren't necessarily aware of right now with DDR5 is that there are 2 types of DDR5 modules that are available. And definitely it is, of course, challenging right now in terms of getting DDR5 memory kits. But one of the cool features that we've introduced is something called AEMP, which will essentially allow those of you that if you essentially are able to get non-XMP DDR5 kits, as opposed to just focusing on your kind of more traditional XMP based kits, you'll actually be able to get even better performance in the stock-based advertised frequencies from that. And in some scenarios, it actually might be beneficial to consider maybe some of these kits, because the frequency improvement and the cast timing improvement could actually mean that you could get better performance out of those kits and save yourself a little bit of money than it would be at getting some essentially quote unquote higher end XMP based kits. But we'll talk a little bit more about this. We'll actually go through the demo. I'll install the memory. I'll walk you through exactly how it works, some of the actual things that we had to do in terms of implementing this feature and function, and things along those lines. So let's go ahead and see what else we've got going on here. Hey, Kevin, thanks for joining us. So interesting. Kevin, if you can maybe consider joining our PCDIY Facebook group, or send me an email, pcdiy@asus.com. Generally, 3600 megahertz is a pretty conservative memory frequency, so you shouldn't generally see too many issues. I will tell you that one of the most common things, though, that people run into, and this would be true for DDR4, DDR5, is going to be when we're talking about memory kits, right? And so an example is that traditionally when you buy memory kits, you're going to be buying 2 DIMMs within 1 kit. But some users will sometimes buy 4 DIMMs, but they'll essentially buy 2 kits. The disadvantage of that is that the actual XMP profile that is defined for 2 DIMMs may not actually work correctly for 4 DIMMs. So if you attempt to actually apply an XMP profile, you might actually end up in a scenario where the system might not actually correctly post, or it could have instability issues or any number of other kind of problems. So the best way to kind of test for this is, first and foremost, make sure you update your UEFI BIOS to the latest version. And then secondary to that, install all 4 memory modules, load the UEFI defaults, and then check your memory at the UEFI defaults. That's important because the DRAM divider that you're testing is going to be essentially the baseline frequency. If it's stable from there, then what you can go ahead and do is actually enable the XMP profile, but maybe take a step back, maybe 1 divider below that, and then check to see if it's stable. If that also passes, then that's probably an indicator that what's probably the limiting factor is the fact that you're attempting to use a profile that was defined for 2 DIMMs as opposed to 4 DIMMs. It doesn't mean that you can't make it work. It might require that you might have to manually tune maybe a tertiary timing, or maybe make a slight adjustment to the command rate, or possibly maybe increase the DRAM voltage. It could be a number of different configurations, but you should be able to get it working. Hey, Noah, happy to have you here. Hey, Leighton, thanks for joining us here for the stream. Hey, Zach, also thanks for joining us here for the stream as well. Hey, George, no problem. You can make sure to actually catch us on demand. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. So all of those platforms, you can go ahead and check us on after the fact. Hey, Zach, any new details on the Thor 2 PSUs? Nothing super brand new. Essentially, we already made the announcement for those. In terms of kind of timeline availability, we are going to be looking, I think right now, the first model is going to be the 1000 watt, and we're probably not going to see this available until sometime very early next month. And then from there, as we move into the end of the first quarter of 2022, you'll see the other PSUs. So that will be the 1200 watt, the 1600 watt, and then last would be the 850 watt. So that is going to be that. And in case anybody's wondering here, I think I can actually go ahead and maybe bring up a video here. Give me 1 second. See if I can show this to you guys. This is what he's asking about here with the new Thor series PSUs. And yeah, I can go ahead and show this to you guys here. Give me 1 second. All right. Oh, sorry. I got to readjust my monitor there. But this is the Thor series PSUs that we have coming out here. These are essentially just going to be a kind of revised version of the current models that we have. Very high grade, of course. Still really the claim to fame for the Thor series is going to be that large display that's on there. It's got a little bit of revised styling. This model, we're really making a lot of claims in terms of the quiet operation, but the reality is that it's already, with the current generation, extremely quiet. Pretty much nobody's ever going to say that that model is a loud PSU. In fact, the actual load efficiency is very high, and along with already the large heat sinks and the impressive fan implementation that it has on it, the fan generally is not going to be spinning in most scenarios. So unless you're really actively loading the PSU, even on the current generation, the fans don't even come on. But these models will be coming out in the not too distant future. And again, the first model that we'll be having coming out will be the 1000 watt PSU. And then from there, we'll end up releasing, like I said, the 1200, the 1600 watt, and the 850 watt will be the last model that will come out. Okay. Hey, thanks for the keyboard. I don't know which one you're talking about. We've got a couple right here. This is the ROG Falchion. So this is our ultra compact, of course, keyboard. This is USB-C and 2.4 gigahertz wireless. I really like it just from ergonomics. It's very compact, very clean. I, of course, have some putting keycaps on there. And then from there, and this comes in a multitude of different actually switches. You can get them in classic cherry switches, or you can actually also get them in our new ROG NX based switches. And then this one right here is really the classic kind of ROG Strix scope. TKL, so this is without the actual 10 key. I really like this keyboard. It also has a detachable cable, which I find really nice if you want to be able to go ahead and customize it, get different cables. And I also have some different keycaps on here as well. And this also comes in a multitude of different switches, just in case anybody's wondering which keyboards you actually got right there. But no worries on that side. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and get ready to jump into a few things here. Hey, Razor, happy to have you here on the stream. Hey, Zach, will AEMP be released on X570-based motherboards? No, because AEMP is exclusively been designed for DDR5. So since AMD platforms don't currently support DDR5 memory, you cannot have AEMP. For I would say somewhat similar, but it is very different in terms of kind of what the design intent and the functionality is that on AMD-based motherboards, we feature a technology that we've had for literally years, almost really actually more than a decade, which is called DOCP, or dynamic overclocking, our dynamic overclocking profile technology, which essentially attempts to read the XMP profile for your standard Intel XMP based memory kits and then have them work on an AMD platform. So it's quite different, but really kind of respective to each platform, we try to offer different functions and features that would be beneficial for that. All right, so will there be a giveaway in the future? Hey, Razor, we've got all kinds of always different kind of things that are going on. We just recently actually ran a couple of different giveaways, actually on the PCDIY stream that we just had last week. And usually if there's giveaway announcements, all you got to do is follow our social media channels. I generally also try to post those in our PCDIY Facebook group under the announcement section if we do have any going on. And I would say it's almost probably that we've got something going on a monthly basis. So if you're not following us, make sure to go ahead and follow us, and you'll have an opportunity to hopefully be able to win some cool hardware. Do keep in mind though that because we are based out of North America, that generally most of our giveaway campaigns are going to be focused on the ASUS North America region, which would be the United States of America as well as Canada. If you're watching us from abroad, we love you. It's fantastic to have you as ASUS supporters, but just for legal restrictions and a couple of other different factors, generally giveaways will be regionally dependent. So you would want to check out your ASUS respective social channels in your corresponding region. So let's say you were in the UK, it would be UK, Japan, the Philippines, wherever it might be, Australia. Follow ASUS in those respective social media channels. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into a couple of just updates that I've got here, and we will get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is going to be just some UEFI BIOS announcements. Overall, this is probably going to be focused on the majority of users will be for Z690. So specifically our latest generation 12th gen series based motherboards. We did release a new set of UEFI releases. These new UEFI releases are, I would say, strongly recommended. They really do help to even further maximize the overall DDR5 experience that you have. Generally, if you're running DDR4, there wouldn't be that much of a differential between the current UEFI release that you're probably running and this newer release. But as always, usually my recommendation for a new platform is the first 3 months is if there's usually a release, consider updating to that release, although it is not a requirement. The golden rule of thumb is that generally if your system is stable, reliable, running without issues, don't need to worry about updating your UEFI. You can keep the current build that you have and you are good to go. But I would recommend it. Let's go ahead and actually just bring up the product page so you guys can actually see exactly what I'm talking about. So I will go ahead and bring it up for the Maximus motherboard. I'll also go ahead and link the video that I've gone ahead and created, which will guide you through how to go through essentially a UEFI update process. If you have any questions regarding, how to actually do that, I walk you step by step on actually how to update the UEFI. So let's go ahead and first do that. Give me 1 second here. And let me share my screen here. And we'll go here. Yep. All right. So here we are on our product page, and this is for the Maximus Z690 Hero, but this would apply for any one of our Z690 series motherboards. And I'll also drop the link into our PCDIY Facebook group. I will have an actual announcement post that will be up there shortly, which will actually show all the UEFI releases that we had, including some non-Z690 series motherboards. But for those motherboards that do get an update, they're what I would consider mature releases, so they're generally not critical. But all you need to do is head over to the drivers and tools section, then click BIOS and firmware. Now, do keep in mind that if you are running the latest version of our Armory Crate software, you can actually just go into the Armory Crate software and then go to the drivers and utility section, and it can actually check for you if there's new drivers that we have on our website, as well as new UEFI BIOS releases. That being noted, you'll see right here that the new release is this 800 series release right there. That is what we're talking about, and you'll see that there's a number of different kind of notes there that are in the changelog information, including, like I said, improvements to the DRAM stability. There's also another one right there that says CPU microcode. The CPU microcode is important. It does actually handle quite a number of important functions within the CPU, and there are some security benefits to this as well. There's also another update specifically for Z690 series that I'll talk about here outside of the UEFI. So again, if you have these motherboards, you may want to consider this. The two other updates are going to be down here at the bottom. So you'll see one for pretty much any of our boards that feature the ALC 4000 series new audio codec, which is a USB based audio codec. We do actually have a firmware which can help to actually improve some noise that users did report, and we did some optimization. So go ahead and download that corresponding firmware file. It's a very straightforward process. I'll have a post in the, again, PCDIY Facebook group that walks you through, but it's a very simple process to do. Just download it, you'll launch the executable, it will flash the firmware, you reboot your system, and you're good to go. You don't need to reinstall the driver, FYI, but it's a pretty straightforward process. There is also this MEE firmware. So this is the management engine firmware specifically for the Intel CPU. Generally, most times there is not going to be a firmware update that's released after a product launch, but with a lot of varying kind of security concerns, on occasion, sometimes Intel can issue an MEI firmware update, which will generally be security focused. In some situations, it could be for something else, maybe for performance-based purposes or some other avenues, but most of the time it's security related. Again, this is a pretty straightforward download. Just download it, extract it, double-click the executable, and it will apply the MEI firmware update, and you'll be good to go. So these are all going to be applicable, like I said, for pretty much Z690 series motherboards. The audio firmware is only going to be applicable for the motherboards that feature that higher end ALC 4080 series audio codec. So that would be like our ROG Strix and our ROG Maximus series motherboards. Okay. All right. I know we went through a lot of information right there when it came to the Uefi BIOS announcement. So let me just check, see if we've got any questions that came up right there. Hey, Kevin, if there are any updates for the Z690A, that would be part of, like I said, the Z690 series updates that came out. You can check the actual latest release that's come out. Now, keep in mind that generally when we start to release UEFI updates, if you're part of our PCDIO Facebook group, you'll actually see that when I post the announcement, there's a little bit of a kind of FAQ that gives guidance regarding people when they ask, like, how come I haven't seen an update for my motherboard? And commonly what happens is that when we try to release them kind of in packs or kind of series of releases, and it's not necessarily always possible to release every single motherboard in the series at 1 week at one time. Just from a bandwidth perspective, it takes time to do the interoperability, the testing, and the validation. So sometimes in some weeks, I can tell you we can literally go from like 25 to 75 releases literally in 1 week, but on average it's probably somewhere between about 10 to about 25 releases. With Z690 we have a lot of motherboards, so generally we're probably not going to have them all in 1 week, but usually within about a 2 to 3 week gap, you'll generally see all the motherboards within a respective series. So if you don't see your motherboard updated within that kind of time frame, then you could of course reach out to us. But generally, just make sure to give it enough time to allow for kind of the entirety of the series to be updated. Okay. Hey Kevin, how you doing? I think we'll be actually featuring your updated micro ATX build in the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. So happy to have you here as well as always in the PCDIY stream. So thanks so much for joining us here. If you're saying that one site doesn't have access to it, that's probably just a server refresh based factor. So just give it a little bit of timing. You should see it update. I can check right now, but I'm pretty sure it'll probably populate for me. But most times, usually if you see that there's like a site discrepancy or something like that, it's usually in relation to the fact that, like I said, the site is going through like maintenance and it just requires some updating. And so there are different times that occurs, and usually within about 24 to 36 hours, those type of kind of discrepancies will be resolved. So I wouldn't worry about it. I can see right here, I'm on the USA site right now. It just brought it up for me. The latest 0803 release is online, and that's for the US website. So I don't have any issues there. So maybe you want to clear your cache. That can sometimes be an issue, but I can show you right here. You can see right here, loaded up, no problems for me right there. Okay. All right. That being said, let's go ahead and keep moving things along. All right. So see UEFI updates. We've got a cool update for you guys for the actual eShop. So I think about 2 weeks ago, I gave you guys a little bit of an update that the ASUS eStore, where we used to have kind of like a dedicated website for our eShop, we went ahead and integrated our essentially web store into our primary website to hopefully simplify the end user experience. And over the coming weeks, we're going to continue to add more functionality and improvements into the essential kind of shopping experience that we offer. But one of the new things that we have now integrated is going to be some bundle bundling options. So for those of you that may be looking at certain kind of product pairings, GPU configurations, upgrade paths, it might be your worthwhile to maybe check these out and see what options might be of interest to you in these kind of pairing configurations. So I will go ahead and drop the link for that. So give me 1 second here and I will drop that into the chat. And I will also go ahead and drop into the chat the link for our group. So give me 1 second right here, and I will do that. And I'm going to need to access a code here. 1 second, guys. And I will also give you guys essentially the URL information so that if you have interest in checking out essentially the different portions of the ASUS eStore site, you can also do that as well. So let me see here. I brought up, yep. Okay, I've got the eStore site up. So let's go ahead and show you what that looks like. So this is the eStore bundle site. So if you actually go over into the top of the page, at the very kind of, you'll see there's a new tab that says shop. You can see bundles like laptops, monitors, kind of different components and things like that. So if you go to bundles though, you'll see that there's actually now kind of some bundled configurations. And then generally if it's in stock or available, you'll see that there's actually a buy option. So you have buy options, you have notified me, and this would actually exist for any one of our products. We're integrating more and more kind of integrated notices for different types of product listings. So if you see that there's a notification option, I would recommend actually signing up so that you can be notified once that product actually comes into stock. This is going to be direct from ASUS as opposed to going to an e-tailer like, let's say, Newegg or Amazon. Do keep in mind, though, that we still will offer essentially our intelligent, what's called where to buy functionality. So that means that in some cases, what you can actually see is a where to buy a link that's actually updated over time. Essentially, in our backend, we have kind of a little bot that will essentially scour and work with our coordinated partners so that as listings maybe go up at Newegg or Amazon or B&H or different kind of e-tailers or retailers, there will then be where to buy links. It can take sometimes up to a couple of weeks for those to all to be actively refreshed. But if you're trying to check where products may be available, that is also a good resource for you guys. Okay. And let me drop the link here in the chat for our group. So if anybody is interested in joining, you guys can do that as well. All right. Let me see any questions kind of coming up there. Oh, hey, Kevin. Sorry, I'm not sure which board. Maybe I just incorrectly looked at your comment, but I recently checked, I think, almost all the boards in the last 2 days, and I didn't see any issues. So again, it's either what I've already noted or just give it some time. All right, so let's go ahead and move things on from there. We've got that new shop announcement. And I think, yeah, let's go ahead and actually get ready to talk about some new mice. So specifically, we're going to be talking about the brand new TUF Gaming M4 Wireless mouse. So this is going to be, I think, focused probably, like I said, for probably people that are on a little bit more of an aggressive budget. Of course, with the TUF Gaming line, really the focus is predominantly going to be for users that are going to be generally first-time builders, or maybe you're looking for kind of a balance in terms of features and functionality and don't necessarily kind of need some of the more niche specialized options that we might have on RG products, but still, of course, don't want to compromise on the respective kind of quality and the core functionality. That's really where TUF Gaming is going to offer its, I think, its strongest kind of design tenets is really kind of being a well-rounded product, really baseline product, and also I think a really clean and kind of neutral design, which is also nice because some people, if you don't necessarily want to kind of more specialized kind of stylized aesthetics that you might see on some of our RG centered products, TUF Gaming tend to have a little bit still of a bold and strong design aesthetic, but it's going to be a little bit kind of more muted in terms of some of the actual design aspects. So let me go ahead and bring up some of the images here for this TUF Gaming mouse. And actually, I think I've got a video for it here too. So go ahead and open this up here. And yep. All right. Very cool. Okay. Okay. Yep. I've got it right here. Okay, so let's take a look here at our TUF Gaming mouse. Sorry, I need to make an adjustment here for my monitor. But here you guys can see it's got a really nice, clean, kind of stylized silhouette. It's going to be what we refer to generally as kind of like a semi-ambidextrous type mouse, but it's still going to probably be best suited for, of course, right-handed based users, but of course, left-handed users would also still be able to utilize it. Good quality optical sensor on there, up to 1200 DPI. 300 IPS, 35G. This is going to be either a wireless mouse in terms of 2.4 gigahertz low latency wireless or Bluetooth, Bluetooth low latency, as well as power efficient. So it's a Bluetooth 5.0 specification standard. And it is also going to be a little bit of a departure from some of our other mice in terms of that it will give you flexibility in terms of customizing the battery, but it's going to do that actually through a traditional either AA or AAA battery. But that's kind of cool because generally in most type of mice that you see a battery being utilized to power it, you don't have the flexibility of changing things up. But we'll actually show you some of the cool design implementations that we have here specifically for this mouse. So let's go ahead and pull up some of our images here, and we will take a closer look at it and allow you to see what we got going on here. We'll bring up the product page. All right, so here we can see we've got the mouse, really clean, kind of nice silhouette. One of the things that you'll actually notice right here, and we'll actually take a look at this when we pull up the actual product page, but is going to be the actual shell itself. This is actually using a Pbt Finish. So Pbt, if you're not aware, it's a different type of actually composite polymer. This polymer is actually going to be more resistant to kind of oils and dust, debris, and dander, and ultimately also helps to have essentially reduced level of kind of sheen or shine, especially when you're making a lot of movements over the mouse, which you're normally going to be using when, of course, you're gaming. So that is actually a kind of cool feature. It's subtle. You might not realize it, but it is there within the inherent design. Of course, independent buttons for the left and right, so you don't have any type of false depressions. Now, I don't have an inside diagram photo for you, but I can tell you this does utilize our pivoted design mechanism, and I'll talk a little bit more about why that's actually kind of cool because it helps to eliminate some of the issues that you have with what's called a debounce delay. I like the fact that it has an actual integrated center mounted DPI button. Some of our mice have actually moved this to the underside of the mouse because some kind of more, I'd say, prosumer and professional players favor that because they don't want to have to worry about potentially hitting it. I like having quick access to it, so I do actually really like this type of design right here. Okay, so let's keep looking along here. When we go over to the base, we're going to see if we have full 100% PTFE based feet. So that's going to give us really nice, smooth, responsive tracking over across a number of different surfaces. High quality, centrally mounted based sensor, which helps to balance the actual weight distribution pretty nicely. You've got a toggle switch right here to also give you flexibility to be able to move between wireless and Bluetooth connectivity on this mouse. So you're good to go on that side. When we take a look there at the side profile, you'll also see that we have put in a little bit of subtle textured finish just so that you kind of have a little bit of muscle memory support. So what I mean by muscle memory is that as you begin to kind of grip a mouse and you kind of are figuring out where to potentially put your fingers, having essentially points of difference in texture can be beneficial at helping you to kind of know where you're pulling back, where you're maybe going to crunch in a little bit, how you're going to maybe adjust aspects of your grip and things along those lines. So that is a nice kind of subtle touch that you're not necessarily going to see detailed in the product page, but it does make a difference, and it is point of kind of the design detailing that we have there. And I'll also tell you that the fit is very solid. If you had the opportunity to feel our ROG based mice, you'll feel very good that we don't have kind of creaking mice that feel kind of weird or kind of feel like that they're not necessarily put together well, especially when you start to get into mice that are in that $40 to $60 price band. This is going to be more common. And with this price of this mouse being, I think, $59.99, the construction quality is really solid. So a little bit of a different side profile there where you can see, of course, your side mounted buttons and switches. Switches right here are also going to be 60 million rated, which is quite a bit better than many of the other similar mouse and definitely much lower cost mice. Some competitors, I can tell you, even in more premium mice, are still using switches that are only rated for 10 million clicks. So 60 million is quite nice. Now, this will not feature swappable or customizable switches like we have on our ROG mice, but still 60 million is going to give you pretty much probably almost an indefinite lifespan. But if you want the flexibility to customize, or you really want that assurance at being able to replace your switches, then you would definitely want to take a look at one of our ROG mice, which feature our push fit socket design. Okay. You can see some nice material right here, of course, which allows for, I think, cleaner delineation when you're using the actual encoder or the score wheel, as people call it. And you'll see the light right there. There's actually a 4-stage DPI-based implementation, so you can go ahead and customize the DPI at 4 different levels. And there's also 3 onboard memory profiles, so those can be saved directly on the mouse. Nice, clean, compact profile. And of course, I talked about here that the mouse does come included with the support, or essentially it features support for either AA batteries or AAA batteries. And you can see the way that we accommodate this is through an included adapter. And part of the reasoning why you might want to do this is because essentially different batteries will have different weight levels. So of course, a smaller battery will be a little bit lighter. So if you really kind of want to shave off a little bit more weight from the mouse, then you would want to go with your AAA. And if you were okay, maybe wanting to have a little bit more heft, then you would go essentially to AA. But you get the included adapter. Also keep in mind that there is actually a little bit of a weight difference sometimes between even alkaline and lithium. So depending on your battery choices, you can have a different experience. All right, so that wraps up, I guess, a little bit of our visual tour there of the M4. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the product page here, but I'm also going to head and take a look and see if anybody's got any questions here. So give me 1 second before I bring up this product page. I'm going to check out and see if anybody's got any questions here. Hey Mo, in terms of if you're wondering about the notifications from the product page, I don't know. You would probably have to reach out to our web store team. We've just recently integrated these notification functions. So as far as kind of the responsiveness of how quick those notifications are coming out, it's going to be dependent on our backend system in terms of that. So, if you have kind of specificity, exactly wondering how quick that is from the listing to when you get notified, I would strongly recommend to reach out to our web services team. There's a contact us section that you can find that's specifically to our kind of shop, our ASUS eStore, and they can help to give you insight into that information. Okay. Hey, Marsrim, I would recommend sending a service and support ticket to our service team regarding your experience using that. I haven't had any issues with the Ryujin in that regard, but it also depends in terms of um, which application you're using to actually display. So the Ryujin 2 actually supports display mapping from either AIDA64 or from Armory Crate. And so depending on which one, it could be something that might have to be evaluated and improved upon on the AIDA64 side, or if it's natively within our readout functions, then it might be something that we'll have to have our Armory Crate development team look at more closely to attempt to see if we can improve upon that overall functionality and usability. But thank you for your feedback in that regard. Okay. So yeah, does it use rechargeable batteries? So that's actually specifically what I was kind of detailing there as a difference. So the M4 Wireless does not come integrated with any type of batteries. So our traditional wireless mice, take for instance like this one right here that I'm using, the Gladius 3, the Curious Wireless, the Pugio 2, all of those do actually have integrated rechargeable batteries. I like our designs compared to many other competitors though, because since they're designed to actually be opened to be able to change the switches, you can readily easily access the actual rechargeable battery and replace it actually quite easily if you really wanted to, although it's generally not really that much of a concern. But here in this regard, you're actually going to have to install the battery, and it's your choice, whether it's going to be that AAA battery or whether it's going to be that AA battery. Okay. Hey, Steve. Happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us here on the stream. News. Hey Zach, no information right now on that, but make sure to keep it tuned. Rest assured, when we get some more information regarding any of our new kind of branded IPs, we'll definitely be talking about that in the future. Okay, definitely make sure to just keep it tuned, and you're already part of our group, so you'll definitely see those notices when they do come out. So let me go ahead and bring up here the product page for our M4. All right. So again, just a quick recap here of kind of the core specifications. As I noted, up to 1200 DPI, 6 programmable buttons, that PBT top cover. One thing I didn't know right there is that this is one of the first peripheral, actually the first peripheral, but not the first product that we are now implementing our ASUS antibacterial guard technology. This is actually something that we introduced previously on some of our monitors, and it's actually now been rolled out to some of our laptops as well. But essentially, there's an infusion in the polymer, which helps to actually allow for that actually material to be naturally antimicrobial. And that can be beneficial just at helping to essentially have resistance for things like, let's say, E. coli would be an example. This is actually tested and validated, and it has actually passed compliance regulation from international standards. So it is something that we actually have clear documentation and international standards on. And like I said, it's not necessarily a key focal point in terms of it being a gaming oriented feature, but it's a nice kind of benefit, especially if maybe you're in a household where there's a lot of different people that are touching different things. And even just in general, your hands, of course, are going to really be the touchstone to everything, right? They're making contact with all kinds of things. It's nice to know that essentially that the actual material itself is going to inhibit the buildup of essentially bacteria, essentially kind of developing on it. So that is something to just keep in mind, that this is the first mouse that essentially we have that features this type of design polymer implementation that's present there. So in terms of your kind of core specifications, like I talked about, 2.4 gigahertz as well as Bluetooth connectivity. 62 grams is going to be the weight, but keep in mind that that will change based on the battery that you do utilize. Of course, like I said, AA batteries are going to be a little bit heavier than AAA batteries, and there's also a difference between alkaline and lithium-based batteries as well. Okay, the actual top cover is going to be made also of that PBT-based polymer material. And there is also going to be 3 onboard profiles that this actual mouse has. And this mouse will hopefully be coming online in terms of availability by the very end of this month. We have actually already received it in terms of our warehouse, so we're just getting through the process of getting it essentially listed in internally. So it might actually be available on our ASUS eStore before anywhere else. And then shortly, not too long after, you'll see it start showing up at other essentially e-tailers and retailers. So, Newegg and whatnot would have it available. And in terms of kind of customization, this is going to be using our Armory Crate software. So with an Armory Crate, you can go ahead and make all your corresponding adjustments to your different profiles. You can make DPI level adjustments. You can, of course, remap the buttons. All of that is available. And again, I really do like the flexibility of having 3 onboard profiles so that you can map different functions and different usage scenarios for different profiles. So I very much like commonly having, let's say, a profile that's used for normal daily use, and then a profile that might be for a specific game environment, and then maybe even having another profile which might be more specifically tuned for a different type of game, right? So you do have a lot of flexibility in that regard. All right, so that is going to be the TUF Gaming M4 Wireless mouse. Pretty cool addition to the actual TUF Gaming series of peripherals. And we do have pretty much a complete lineup now in the TUF Gaming lineup side. So you've got TUF Gaming keyboards, we have TUF Gaming headsets, we have now our TUF Gaming mice. We recently updated the TUF Gaming mouse pad as well. So you've pretty much got the entire kind of range of peripherals. And then, of course, we also have a very expansive ROG peripheral lineup if you're looking for something even more premium, kind of more feature rich. Yeah, so Christopher, it is not yet available right now. Yeah, so like I said, it will be available probably by about the very end of the month. I checked with our product management team, and we just received this model in. So hopefully by about the end of the month, we will have it available online. If not, I would definitely say very early next month. But our goal is to have it online before the end of the month. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get ready to jump into our next product here, which is going to be our ROG Pbt Keycaps, which are going to be for our, of course, RG/RX based switches. So let me go ahead and bring this up here. All right. And actually, I don't even remember, did I actually get all these images loaded in here for this one? If not, I'll see if I can get some of these loaded in here for you guys. Give me 1 second. Okay, cool. Yeah, I've got them right here. And keep in mind that these keycaps will be supporting both the ROG Claymore 2 as well as the ROG Strict Scope RX. So both keyboards. So let's go ahead and take a look at these images right here. All right. So we can see right here, we've got the actual keycaps. There's a really nice included keycap puller that you'll see right there that actually comes included with the actual keycap set. Now, for PBT, if you've kind of never utilized a PBT keycap, really the benefit is going to be that this actual material itself is going to be significantly, essentially improved upon in terms of its resistance to dust, debris, dander. So very much just like what we talked about, the benefit of having a PBT shell for a mouse, it definitely applies to keycaps just because of the consistent wear. So some of the benefits is you're not going to have to worry about the legend fading because these are also double shot. So they're actually molded in there. So there's nowhere for the actual legend to fade. They also are even a little bit thicker. Now, normally that would actually benefit you in terms of reducing some key wobble, but the RX-based switches themselves, because of their 4-point stem design, already actually has very, very good, essentially kind of stability and what's called minimal force deviation, where if I click on either one of these points, the actual key feels really solid. And I'll tell you that even compared to really, really good switches, this is just better. And it just comes down to the physics of having a 4 points and having 4 points of contact as opposed to having a centrally located stem, which is just going to have more wobble. It doesn't matter what switch, what cap you use, you're always going to have wobble when you have just a center pointed stem. And so this is part of the reason why on the RX based switches, we decided to revise this. It does limit the ability to have more customized keycaps, but generally gamers don't replace their keycaps. It tends to be users that are a little bit more niche, more specialized with kind of having custom type of keyboards. They prefer to customize their switches and their keycaps. But with that in mind, like I said, we did want to go ahead and release a Pbt keycap set for those that are a little bit more demanding and really are kind of going to be pushing their keyboards. So this is here on the Claymore 2. But again, this will be offered on the, essentially be compatible for the Claymore 2 and the RG Strict Scope RX. So overall, very, very nice set that will come included here. It'll be coming in at a price point of $29.99. I can actually show you right here if you want to get a little bit close. If somebody is interested in kind of understanding some of the base differences on the ROG Strict Scope RX switches, these are our optical based switches. I can show you a little bit of a close up and how they differ compared to kind of traditional base designs. But for the most part, the reality is that if you really kind of want to get all the information, check out the actual dedicated stream where I talked about the actual Claymore 2 and the RG Strict Scope RX. We've got those streams actually online right now, and you can find out actually quite a bit more about them. But let me go ahead and plug up this keyboard, and I'll kind of show you again here a moment, and we'll bring up the product page. And again, availability, we're probably going to be looking, I think, somewhere towards the very beginning of next month. We're going to probably have these available. And again, the price point should be probably about $30 is going to be the price point for these these keycap switches. So let's see if I can lighten this up for you guys here. Okay, cool. So switch over here. So if you guys see right here, this is actually our ROG Strict Scope. So this utilizes our RX-based switches. And so I can go ahead and remove one of these. So let me just actually show you what it looks like here. So you'll see right here that that's really one of the key differences. You have a centrally mounted LED as opposed to a traditional base design is actually going to have the LED offset. So it actually gives us much more balanced lighting around the entirety of the actual switch. There's going to be actually more stable operation because you actually have 4 points there. And so what I mean by that is that the actual depression on any one of these 4 quarters is going to actually have significantly less wobble than you would have let's say on a Cherry MX based keyboard. And so on a Cherry MX based keyboard, if we pull over that keyboard, so I can go ahead and show you right here. So this is a Cherry MX based keyboard. And if I was to pull that off, you'll see that you have a center mounted stem, and that center mounted stem, it does produce a lot of wobble. So you'll see right here, there's a lot of wobble. And it doesn't matter really where you hit on the 4 points, there's going to be a lot of what's called force deviation. And so there's significantly less force deviation when you actually click on any one of those 4 points. And that's really nice for touch typists. It just feels overall better. And it's one of those things that it's very much hard to kind of describe until you get the opportunity of feeling it, just how much kind of smoother the overall key feels. Again, if you kind of want to get some nice hands-on experience, join the PCDIY Facebook group. We have plenty of users that have the RG Strix RX keyboard or have the Claymore 2, and they can give you their hands-on real-world experience. We do have these in both linear-based switches, so reds, as well as clicky-based switches with blues. So you kind of have the 2 most popular options. But 2 fantastic keyboards. I'm not going to go into all the design elements that we have on the Claymore 2 and the ROG Strix Scope RX, because there's a lot to talk about there, and we have dedicated streams on it. But these keycaps will be compatible with this keyboard and also our Claymore 2. And the main difference really is going to be that with the ROG Strix Scope RX, this keyboard is going to be a full traditional keyboard, right, with the included numpad. And then from there, the Claymore 2 is going to be a kind of a really innovative base keyboard in that it's going to give you the flexibility of both. You can have 10 keyless base design because you can remove the numpad. But if you also want the numpad, you can actually reattach it, and you can actually attach it to the left-hand side or to the right-hand side. And that keyboard is also going to be USB-C, wired, or it can also be wireless. So really kind of gives you the best of both worlds. You can do anything you want with that keyboard. So let's go ahead and quickly bring up the product page here. And again, if anybody's got any questions, I'll make sure to answer those questions here. All right, so here is the product page. ROG Strix Scope, excuse me, ROG Pbt Keycap switches. A double shot keycaps set for the ROG RX based switch keyboards, which again is going to be the Claymore 2 or the ROG Strix Scope RX. So it's got all the information broken down to you, pretty straightforward, nothing too complicated in terms of kind of all the information, because it's pretty much just a keycap set. Those are all the actual keycaps that you get, and you also get the keycap puller. So that is all included there. Let me go ahead and share that in the chat there for you guys if anybody's interested. And I'll go ahead and double check and see if anybody's got any questions. And then we're going to get ready to get our AEMP demo up and running here. And that'll take me a moment because I'm actually going to have to connect the motherboard, get everything situated right there, and go through a couple of things. But give me 1 second here. Let me just see what we got in terms of any comments. Let's see here. When will we see an ASUS ROG RGB fan? There's no information I can give you right now. It's something that I know a lot of people are interested in seeing from us. And it is something that we have our R&D team and kind of our product management team looking at. So, of course, we did recently release, do I have it over here? Yeah, I think I have it over here. Oh, no, I thought I had one over here. I thought I had our ROG Strix XF120, which is that's our traditional 120 millimeter fan, which is non-RGB. But right now, no ETA. Definitely rest assured, if you're part of our PCDIY group, you'll definitely find out as soon as I have some teasers to be able to drop. And maybe you may see something in 2022, but as of right now, nothing in detail there. Awesome. Thanks for your feedback, Kevin, in regards to your experience with the PBT keycaps for your Horus. And glad to know that you've had an experience. And hopefully you can give a little bit of people your thoughts on what the RX switches were like. And actually, if you could feel the difference from going from, let's say, a traditional kind of mechanical based switch to not only the optical switch, but also actually going over to that RX switch design, which for me, I really did feel that it was a noticeable difference, that you could really feel kind of just that more consistency that you had when you were just typing. That it just felt smoother. It felt really nice. I also like their tone. I felt that they have a nice, clean tone to them. They feel a little bit less, quote unquote, chattery to me than many times what you have with a lot of traditional Cherry MX based switches and their corresponding keycaps. Hey, right now, no plans for a white PBT keycap set or pudding keycap set. It is something that we have passed feedback to our team, but if you are interested in, of course, having a white based product, then we do have our Moonlight white keyboard. So that is going to be something that I would definitely check out. Let me see if I can bring it up here. It's a beautiful looking keyboard that we have in that regard. So that if you do want to get yourself a nice white keyboard from ASUS, we do have you covered there. Let me see if I can bring it up right here. Yep. That's our Moonlight White peripheral line. We just launched that not too long ago. And these also are using our brand new ROG NX-based switches, which have a really nice feel to them. They're not going to be the same as those optical RX-based switches, but still very, very nice. And they do carry the benefit that if you did ever want to get different keycaps because they are still utilizing a traditional stem design, then you could swap out to that. So hopefully that answers your question there. Thank you so much, JE. That's very nice of you to say. And hopefully you're enjoying your Friday and you'll have the day off soon when the weekend comes. So, Mike, to clarify, keep in mind that the keyboard, right? We're talking about just the keycap set. So that's the same price that we have for our current PBT keycap set, which is $30. The price of the keyboard in itself is different, but I think that the actual price is very good for the ROG Strict Scope RX. That keyboard is generally be coming in at about like sometimes on promo for about $100 up to about $130. So this is the keycap set that would be corresponding for that. And of course, the Claymore 2 is a bit more expensive just because of its specialized design implementation and the fact that it's a wired and wireless based keyboard. This is an ASUS ROG microphone. We no longer produce it. It's the ROG Magnus. So if anybody's interested in it, we no longer have it available, but maybe in the future we'll have something. Yes, you are correct. The Oriogen 2 does not come with RGB fans. It comes included with Noctua IPPC based fans, which are fantastic, very high performing fans. They really do a great job. All right, so let's go ahead and get ready to jump into AEMP and talk about some cool stuff that we've got going on there. So let me go ahead and get this up. All right, so now I want to go ahead and talk about ASUS Enhanced Memory Profile. So the main thing that really kind of we want to talk about here is that when we're taking a look at kind of DDR5 right now, most of you have probably heard that DDR5 implements a new type of XMP specification, XMP 3.0. But for most intents and purposes, between XMP 2.0 and XMP 3.0, there's not that much of a difference in terms of what the core functionality of XMP introduces. XMP was implemented to be able to allow users essentially a simplified experience when it came to enabling overclocking profiles for memory. And the way it pretty much works is that the memory manufacturer, take for instance in this situation, this would be from Kingston. This is their Fury DDR5 XMP based kit, but it would be pretty much true for any DDR-based memory, DDR4, although this feature, AMP, is exclusive to ASUS Z690 DDR5-based motherboards. But the XMP profile will automatically load, essentially, operating parameters for the DRAM. So this will mean frequency, timings, and voltages. But one of the things that changed when we went from DDR4 to DDR5 was the introduction of something that was called the PMIC. So If we take a look at this module is going to look a lot more basic, right? It doesn't have a heatsink on it, right? I think it still looks nice. It's just black. It's just a clean black PCB, right? But this little guy right here is the PMIC, or essentially onboard voltage regulation. So we can take a closer look at it. Let me see if I can get a shot right here for you guys, and you guys can take a look here. So this is what I'm talking about right here. This little guy is going to be the PMIC. So the PMIC is essentially onboard voltage regulation. Now, when this voltage regulation was introduced, the main kind of factor at how it influences essentially end user pursuits is that before you used to have voltage regulation on the motherboard. By having voltage regulation on the motherboard, you could generally very easily kind of modify the voltage for your memory. And that could be beneficial because when we talk actually about increasing the frequency or tightening the timings on memory, you generally need to increase the voltage. So the baseline specification for DDR5 is going to be 1.1 volts. For DDR4 in the past, it was actually 1.2 volts. And a lot of people that sometimes want to talk about latencies and things along those lines, they really forget that it actually requires very, very high voltages to get to very aggressive low latencies. So an example is having something like a CL14 kit of high frequency like DDR4000 literally can be, in the range of 1.4, 1.5, 1.55 volts. In terms of the amount of voltage that's required to be able to scale to that. So I can bring up some product pages here. Let's see if we can bring up a couple of product pages, and we'll actually show you exactly here before we get into the UEFI. We'll use Team Group as a fantastic partner. They work with us, but this feature actually will work pretty much across all memory manufacturers out there, so it doesn't matter in terms of their DDR5. We have done a validation for this across all of the active what are called memory ICs. So this would be SK Hynix, Samsung, and Micron-based modules. So it will kind of work across the board in that regard. But let's go ahead and take a look at a product page here, and I'll show you kind of specifically what I'm talking about here. So, okay, so we're going to bring up this product page here for some DDR5 memory. And if we take a look at the core specifications, what we'll see right here is you can see that these frequencies, right, 6,000 megahertz is already requiring a bit more voltage. You can see it's requiring 1.25 volts, right? As opposed to that baseline 1.1. And we can see right here, even higher, 6,200 is 1.25. 6,400 is requiring 1.35 in terms of the actual voltage. If we go to, let's say, a more conservative, probably DDR5, standard probably desktop memory, we'll see the actually more nominal voltage frequency. Yeah, so we can see right here, 4800 is going to require 1.1. Now, you could actually increase upon this 1.1 if, let's say, you were going for 4800 that maybe had tighter timings. It depends. You can see this 5200 is 1.2. So we really went from kind of the entire range, right? 1.1, 1.2, then there was, I think, 1.25, and then 1.35. And similarly, same thing, if you were looking actually at high-speed memory for DDR4, the same thing would be the case, is that if you kept going to a tighter timing or a higher frequency, you would have to increase the voltage. The challenge, though, is, again, that PMIC that I talked about, right, will actually limit the application of voltage. And there's actually two types of PMICs that have been introduced. One, a more conservative type of PMIC, which is utilized for more standard-based memory. So this would be non-XMP-based memory kits. And then you would have an OC-centric PMIC, which is going to be favored more by memory manufacturers that are making essentially memory that is designed to run at tighter timings and higher frequency. That PMIC has a higher voltage. But what we've done is essentially, because we realize that there's limits in terms of right now the readiness of all the different types of DDR5 options that are in the market, and we wanted to give users the flexibility of that whatever DDR5 they found that they could have a better experience from, we enabled this AEMP technology. So this enhanced ASUS enhanced memory profile will allow you to essentially bypass the PMIC limitation and essentially apply additional DRAM voltage. But critically, it's not just letting you define the voltage, but we can actually then give you two parameters or two profiles, a profile that's been tuned for better memory efficiency or through the use of tighter timings, or another profile which has actually been tuned for frequency. So I'm going to actually go through this. I'm going to show you exactly how this works. But the cool example of this is like a 4800 kit of memory. We could have this 48 kit of memory that's a CL40 drop down to work at CL32. So that's a huge drop by using AEMP. Or we could also enable Profile 2 and take this 4800 kit of memory and have it operate at DDR 6000. So 6000 megahertz and CL38, which would still even be lower timings than the original timings for the 4800 megahertz. So in both scenarios, you would be getting a significant increase in performance from this basic kit of DDR5 memory. So a really cool feature that we've got on ASUS Z690 DDR5 based motherboards. So that's a little bit of a primer that you would want to keep in mind. The last primer that I will also note there in terms of overclocking information is going to be that when you do talk about when you do talk about overclocking memory, it's important to keep in mind that the memory controller that's inside the CPU determines the speed that you can support. So a lot of people will look at the QVL and say, well, the memory's on the QVL. To a degree that matters, but it's not the only factor. The motherboard can be designed to support high frequencies. The memory that you buy, of course, is certified to run at a certain frequency. And then also the one that you can't necessarily guarantee is going to be the CPU. The CPU itself has an integrated memory controller, and it's very difficult to know what is going to be the range of that memory controller. We generally do evaluate this and understand this by testing hundreds of CPU samples, and we kind of know the effective range. So as I, for instance, can tell you right now pretty confidently that we know that almost all 12th gen CPUs, K-series CPUs, like a 12600K, 12700K, 12900K, can generally run memory dividers up to 6000 megahertz, assuming the memory IC can support that. That's pretty impressive. DDR4 definitely didn't show that type of maturity for quite some time. Where literally, at launch, we're seeing, kits being able to support 4800, which is the baseline, all the way up to something like 6000 megahertz plus. Is very, very impressive. But it's important to keep in mind that if, let's say, you start to buy higher and higher frequencies, that just because you bought 6200 or 6400 kit of memory, or maybe even faster, I've seen some manufacturers look to maybe release 7000 megahertz kits of memory, that the IMC has to support that speed, and that's unknown. There's going to be a percentage that actually begins to fall off. So essentially, maybe a certain percentage of those CPUs. So like if we took 10 CPUs and we tested 4 CPUs, right? Maybe only four of those CPUs will be able to hit that higher memory frequency. So that is something to keep in mind. Whereas the example that I just gave you, something like DDR 6000, we're generally seeing, probably over 90%. So the vast majority of those CPUs can comfortably run that frequency. So let me go ahead and get this set up here so we can actually show you what this looks like in the Uefi. I know that I went through a lot of information right there, so give me a second there and I will take a look at questions. If anybody's interested in kind of test bed that I've got running here, it's nothing super special. This is a 12900K that we've got as far as the CPU. I'm using an ROG Strix 750 watt power supply. That's right here. I've got an Actua U14S cooler. The cooler doesn't really matter to this. And yes, if somebody's wondering, you can cool a 12900K with a U14S. Yes, it's not an issue, especially if you're only gaming. This is actually more than enough in terms of cooling. The motherboard right here is going to be our Maximus Z690 Hero, but this feature would also be on boards like here, like our Prime Z690, or pretty much any one of our DDR5 based Z690 based motherboards. So that's pretty much all I have set up right there. And then for the DIMMs, these ones right here, like I said, they're non-XMP. You need non-XMP memory to be able to enable this AEMP feature. This is a Patriot 4800 megahertz based kit of memory. So I can show you guys here. Let me just show it to you quickly for anybody that wants to see. And we'll show it to you in the Uefi. There you go. You can see that's our kit of 4800 megahertz memory. And as I noted, you can see it's 4000 megahertz, CL40, 1.1 volts. Okay. All right, guys. So let me get this kit installed here. Okay. Got, I think, everything installed there. I'm going to need to probably find my HDMI. Oh, okay. Got my HDMI cable here. All right, and I will clear my CMOS just to start entirely from kind of defaults. And let me go ahead and check and see if we got any questions right here. while I finish connecting everything. Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Dusan. That's very nice of you. I thank you. Definitely one of the things that we are striving to do with our PCDIY initiative is to help to try to be more informative, help you guys better understand the products, the features, the functionality, take your guys' feedback, also supply that to our product development team, and ultimately just help to be there for you guys as far as an amazing community of passionate users. So thank you for your support. Yes, AK. What I meant by there, as far as like the configuration and setup, right? Definitely the 12900K is an outstanding CPU and a very high-end CPU. But this functionality would still also be applicable if you were running a Core i5. So that's what I meant in terms of kind of that the CPU is not kind of like a specially bin CPU or something along those lines. Right. Again, this feature would work if it was a 12600K, 12700K, 12900K. And again, if on the motherboard side, I wasn't using our higher end Maximus motherboard, it would still work on this, like I said, Prime series motherboard, or if I was on a ProArt series motherboard or something along those lines. All right. So let me go ahead and get my keyboard and mouse plugged in here. Okay. All right, so we've got our test bed there, kind of more or less set up. I don't want to take up too much of the room there for you guys so you guys can see everything. All right, need to still some room for my keyboard and mouse here. Okay, all right, I think we've got everything we need there. And we're going to go ahead and power my system up. You see, one of the nice things also I love about our ROG Strix power supplies, and just like the Thor power supplies, they're silent-based PSUs, so the fan isn't going to come on because it's not under a heavy load, so it's going to go through. So right now, the system is pretty much just going through its power on self-test, so it's doing its memory training. And once it goes and completes the memory training, it's probably going to dump back to the UEFI, letting us know, hey, you cleared the CMOS. Can you go into the UEFI to get things up and running? So we're going to do that there in a moment, and we'll get everything set up there. What are the temps these reach under load? So temps you wouldn't really need to be concerned about for the memory, even at running at higher voltages. There's actually an internal thermal monitoring system is built on DDR5, and even when they're running at 1.25, 1.35, 1.45 voltages, which most users are not going to run, we haven't seen any issues in that regard. So just generally, the ambient airflow is going to be more than enough, and if you got a well kind of situated airflow design within your chassis setup, you're going to be more than enough. If you're talking about the temps that would exist for an air cooler for something like 12900K, it very much depends on your load. But under gaming load, with a 12900K, you can, I would probably say, see temperatures in the averages of like the high 60s to about the mid 70s. It's definitely very reasonable. It's not hot. There's a lot of this kind of conjecture around there. The 12900K is really difficult to cool. It's not a difficult CPU to cool. You can use a standard 12, like I said, a U14S or a 240 millimeter AIO cooler, something like right here. I've got, this is our ROG Strix LC 240. This would entirely work fine. No problems in terms of cooling it. It really all comes down to just your kind of load, right? If you're doing a lot of consistent multi-threaded heavy workloads, then yes, then you would need better cooling because you're going to be drawing on a higher level of load on the CPU, so you need to be able to dissipate it more. But for general gaming, general application workloads, you really don't need something extreme in terms of the overall cooling, the cooling that's used on the system. And keep in mind that if you actually go back and watch our 12th gen overclocking live stream, I did all my overclocking there with, I think, our RG Strix LC 280. And that was, going up to, I think, peak overclocks on per core. I think it was 5.4 gigahertz or something like that, which again, could still be entirely cooled when you're gaming by a traditional high performance AIO, whether it's a 240, 280, or 360. For sure, I would recommend, it would be more favorable to go with a, 360 as opposed to 240, but it's not necessarily a requirement. Okay. All right. No, definitely a custom loop is not required to cool a 12900K. It's great if you want to go ahead and implement one, but it's definitely not a requirement. Like I said, I did all of my testing literally with this cooler for my 12th gen Alder Lake testing. And then I, of course, also had another system configuration setup where I used a 240, 280, and also 360 millimeter AIO. But for general usage, you can entirely use, just like I said, a high performance 240 millimeter AIO, or 360 millimeter. You do not need to go to custom water cooling to be able to actually cool a 12900K. All right, so I think probably we should be up in the UEFI. So let me see if we can get into the UEFI environment, guys. I'm going to test right now. So in a moment here, we're going to see if this actually dumps into the UEFI. And there we go. Okay, so we can see everybody. Hopefully you guys can see me right there. Tell me, guys, if you guys have a preference there. I'm going to put it in the bottom right-hand corner. So we are in the UEFI environment. So I'm going to go ahead and just enter into the UEFI environment, and we're going to see now that we are in our UEFI BIOS, right? So we went ahead and we cleared the CMOS. And if now you can see right here where I'm in the UEFI, we'll see that the baseline, we have our baseline frequency and everything, right? So what I'm going to first do is I'm just going to do F5 defaults. So this is just going to load pure operating defaults. And one of the nice things, if you guys don't know this on ASUS motherboards, is that we do have something that's called an Sbd tool. So you can actually go here to the tools, you can go to Sbd information, and you can actually check the information specifically for your memory module. So you can actually see who the manufacturer is. You can see the vendor's Patriot, the ICs you can see here are SK Hynix, right? We can check the module information, its frequency, the part number information, the serial information, data production, all that stuff. And we can also see right here that this kit of memory does not have an XMP profile. If it had an XMP profile, it would actually be listed right here. So this means that it only has a baseline, what's called JDEC profile, which is essentially that 4800 megahertz and that corresponding timing information of 40, 40, 40. So, and that is then running at 1.1 volts. So again, let me just load our defaults. And we're going to save that. We're going to reboot. And then we're going to enter back into the UEFI here in a moment. I'm going to go back into the operating system. I'm just going to reconfirm those values for you. And then I'm going to actually show you the way that the AEMP function works, or the ASUS Enhanced Memory Profile. So it's a very easy function to actually take advantage of and enable. So in a moment here, it should actually be getting ready to essentially reboot. I do have a Windows installation already set up on this motherboard. So it should just boot up into Windows 10. It wouldn't matter whether it was Windows 10 or Windows 11. Okay. All right, so we are booting up right here. And, oh, sorry, I hit delete there just out of kind of habit there. I didn't need to. But if you notice that when we loaded up the defaults, you'll see that the baseline right there, now that the system is working at, is going to be that baseline of 4800 megahertz. So it did actually apply the automatic JDEC profile, right? So that has gone ahead and been loaded. And if we want to check essentially the corresponding information, we can see right here, the target DRAM frequency is 4800 megahertz, 4800 megahertz here, and that 1.1 volts for the memory. And then if I go to DRAM timing control, we'll also see right here that the actual baseline value is also present for those cast timings. So we can see 40, 40, 40. Now, a nice tip for those of you who might not be aware is that if you want to save any information ever, if you're in the UEFI for some reason, you want to just have this information to be able to share in the community or for reference, you can use function in F12 and you can do a screenshot to a flash drive. So you can see right there that I plugged in a flash drive. I'm going to save the actual screenshot and it will screen capture directly to the flash drive. So you don't actually have to use your phone to take a picture or anything like that. Okay. So let's go ahead and reboot into the operating system. We'll confirm our values and then I'll show you actually how to enable this in terms of the UEFI. So again, our baseline that we're going to be starting with here is going to be this Patriot kit of memory, 4800 megahertz, working at 1.1 volts, and then with a corresponding set of timings at 40, 40, 40. Okay. So this won't work with Crucial DDR5. Yes, correct. If you have memory, and I can show you again if you really want to see it, but this kit right here, this is a Kingston kit of memory. All right. This is a Kingston Fury Beast DDR5 kit that actually has an XMP profile. The XMP profile essentially will limit our ability to use the AEMP functionality. So we still actually can bypass the PMIC information. So if there was limitation in terms of voltages, you could still manually define voltages, but you would have to go about manually tuning the memory. One of the really nice benefits that you have with the AEMP function is that we essentially go through an optimized level of essentially tuning specific to the memory that we detect. So whether it's SK Hynix, whether it's Micron, whether it's Samsung, and then we will automatically provide you profiles that will either be one profile that's tuned for timings or another profile that's tuned for frequency. That's going to be different because that's already been done technically by the memory manufacturer. So again, this AEMP function will not work if you have XMP based memory. Okay. I think we're probably going to be, yeah. So we can see right here, we're now in our operating system environment. So go ahead and get ready, and we're going to boot here into the firmware. Actually, we can just confirm right here. Let's go ahead and first just confirm our value. So I'm going to open up AIDA64. And again, if you guys didn't know, all ASUS Maximus series motherboards come with a full 1-year licensed version of AIDA64 for free. It comes included with the motherboard, which is awesome, okay? It downloads it directly through Armory Crate. So we can see right here that we open it up and it is running in the correct actually configuration. So DDR5, 4800, right? And then we can see right there 40, 40, 40. So that would be that. And then if you actually wanted to test bandwidth performance, you can go to your cache and memory benchmark option right here. You could run this, and then you could have your baseline for performance if you wanted to kind of compare the two, right? So we have essentially, again, that's 4800, 40, 40, 40. So let's go ahead and now apply the ASUS enhanced memory profile. And to access the UEFI, you have a couple of easy ways that you can kind of do that. I can go here to recovery options. I can go to advanced startup. And if you guys have never done this before, the cool way that I like doing this is that I don't have to worry about kind of manually hitting the delete key. It'll just prompt me to essentially go to the kind of the advanced startup screen, and then I'll note that I want to essentially access the UEFI firmware environment, and then I'll reboot me straight into the UEFI firmware. Okay. So we're going to go to troubleshoot right here, advanced options, and then we'll go to UEFI firmware settings, restart, and then we'll reboot into the UEFI. Yeah, so one of the nice things that I will say is that the Intel's platform, especially also DDR5, this is something that a lot of reviewers aren't even talking about, is that the kind of out-of-box experience is better. It gives you the flexibility of essentially having just better performance right out of the box. Because on AMD-based platforms, if you want to have a higher memory frequency, you have to manually set it because it's an overclock profile. And keep in mind that even if you're actually not going to run an overclock profile, but you even want a 3200 megahertz, if you install DDR4 memory on an AMD motherboard or even on an Intel motherboard in this DDR4, the baseline JEDEC value is probably going to be 2666, maybe 2800, could even be 2400 megahertz. So if you fail to actually enable the XMP profile, which would even be for 3200 megahertz, you'd even have worse performance. And while yes, you can do that, and that's the right thing to do, the reality is that there's actually people that don't do that, and you have a worse experience. So it's nice that a guaranteed baseline at a minimum is pretty much that 4800 megahertz, right? But anyways, let's go and show you how this actually works here. We can go to AI Overclock Tuner, and then from there, you'll see that there's a tab. It says ASUS Enhanced Memory Profile. We just need to select ASUS Enhanced Memory Profile, and you'll see that there's two options. One is right there. It's going to show us that we have one profile. So this is our optimized profile, which is focused at users that essentially want tighter timings, right, for kind of just that preference of, you know, maximum efficiency. Also, less modification to the voltage. You can see here that because we understand which memory ICs that we're using, we can tune this because we have the industry insight to know that we can essentially tune these down. And this is still using the same voltage, so 1.1 volts. While if we scale over to a higher frequency with profile 2, we're actually still going to get lower timings, right? Because 38, 38, 38 is still going to be less than 40, 40, 40, but it's going to be DDR6000, but this is going to be at 1.25 volts, right? So let's go ahead and just show you what that looks like. We're going to select that profile. We don't need to do anything else. Once we've selected that secondary profile, we are going to essentially save and exit. And again, to confirm, to show you again the difference, right now the motherboard is running its baseline profile. So if we go to the DRAM timing controls, right, you'll see that that's currently 40, 40, 40, but it's going to change to 32, 32, 32, right? So at this point, we just need to go to F10. The change log will come up letting us know that those changes are going to occur, and then we will go ahead and reboot. So this is going to take a moment here to reboot and apply these settings. Sometimes when it's going through essentially the memory training, essentially the motherboard is kind of adjusting to these changes. It could take a little bit longer for the what's called post than it would be, let's say, if it was just operating in its baseline parameters. So sometimes just give it a little bit of extra time. It could maybe be an extra 15 to 30 seconds, maybe up to a minute, depending on the density of the memory. But usually it should be, I would say, probably about maybe an extra 15 to 30 seconds, but usually not too much more than that in terms of the additional time that it will require. So it should be getting ready to kind of complete the training process here in a moment. It's going to get ready to post. So we can see right there, it's gone ahead and posted. I'm going to enter into the Uefi environment again. And now we will go ahead and check our settings. So we can see right here, again, this is 4800 megahertz, right? We see that the voltage has not been modified, but we now want to confirm our settings. And let's head back over to our okay, sorry, it looks like we dropped out there for a moment, but let me go ahead and go back here. So again, head back into the UEFI, and so we're in the DRAM timing controls, and right here we can see that now it has gone ahead and applied the 32, 32, 32. So all of those values are still active now. So the AEMP profile has gone ahead and successfully been applied, and we are set. So now one of the other cool things that we can do in terms of the motherboard, aren't these timings really way high? So they're actually not, because this is, again, DDR5. It's a different platform. As you scale frequency, timings have to go up. If you compare timings from DDR3 to DDR4, then you would have also said that they're high. But inherently, as you move frequency, you're going to actually have to have higher timings. And there's also other things like effective same bank refresh, which is a way that the actual memory is accessing essentially the NAND, excuse me, not the NAND, but the ICs, is actually superior on DDR5 than it is on DDR4. So there's some architectural changes. You can't just purely kind of try to compare the two, because it's not a direct apples to apples comparison, right? But as always, you're always going to be scaling up essentially timings. They're going to move up as you move frequency up, okay? So let's go ahead and now show you the next item here. So is that if you wanted to actually test stability, one of the other cool things on the ROG series motherboards is they have memory tests built in here. So you can see right here that there's a little tab right here. If I want to actually test this, I could click on this button and it will reboot straight into a memory test. So this is inside of the UEFI environment, which is really nice and simple. So this is really easy for you to be able to benefit from. So if you've got an ROG Maximus series motherboard, you didn't even have to kind of create a bootable utility or anything like that. You were literally straight able to boot into the memory test environment inside of the UEFI environment after you got ahead and complete your memory tuning, whether that's enabling XMP, using AEMP, manually tuning it, or whatever you wanted to do, you can do that. I'm not going to let it run through the entire memory test, so I'm going to go ahead and exit it out. But also show you that there's some other cool things that you can do here. Like you can actually run a RAM benchmark. So if you want to actually test the read and write performance, you could do that, where you can see right here, do you want to go with read or you want to go with write? You could go ahead and select that, and you can run the test, and it'll give you a nice little actually output file. Gives you even a little graph information where you can actually see the full real-time information that's presented to you there. So that is a very cool function, and that is, again, built into the UEFI environment. So now at this point, it's going to reboot. I'm going to let it reboot actually back into Windows, and we're going to, again, reconfirm that it has gone ahead and set the new profile that we have, which is going to be that 4800 megahertz, but now it's actually working at that reduced set of timings. So 32, 32, 32. Yep. Mo, I will go ahead and try the other memory profile in a moment. I just want to show everybody that it's kind of working here as far as this profile, and then we'll go to the next profile, which will be the 6,000 megahertz, which is quite impressive, again, that we can tune that from the base 4800 kit of memory right here, right? And again, I know that the challenge right now is getting DDR5 memory, but I think this is obviously one of the other cool benefits is that you don't necessarily have to be looking at just these higher end XMP kits of memory. If you can find some nice, like I said, just standard kits of DDR5 memory, you can use this AEMP function and be able to take advantage of this. Hey, Tomas, we actually just recently released actually an updated webcam, which actually has some pretty good specifications, and we already had the ROGI, which also offered 1080p at 60 frames a second. So both of those specifications are quite solid. So I think we do have you covered, whether it's going to be with our more entry-level cam or, like I said, our higher-end cam. And then we also released the ROGI S, which also has our AI noise-canceling technology too. So again, if we open up our AIDA64, we can see right here that it did successfully apply the AEMP profile. So again, that is going to be DDR5 4800 megahertz now at 32, 32, 32. So we have gone ahead and now essentially improved upon the efficiency, and we have better experience from our DDR5 memory just by enabling that profile. So let's again go ahead and move this along, and we are going to enable the secondary profile. So I'm going to give it a second here. I'm just going to cut back here to a wide, and we're going to go in a moment to essentially back to the advanced mode interface. I'm going to select the firmware tuning. We're going to go back into the UEFI, and I will load the actual 6,000 megahertz, which again, this is really impressive to keep in mind that for a brand new memory architecture and a brand new platform, that we're literally being able to see that you can easily literally support such a high memory frequency divider, right? All the way up to 6,000 megahertz on the vast majority of CPUs. And of course, from a performance testing standpoint, on the higher end kind of overclocking side, we've already shown breaking that by a significant margin, right? Where we've got memory partners that we've validated already kits, 6,400, all the way upwards of 7,000, right? And then of course, on the extreme overclocking side, even higher frequencies. So really, really impressive in terms of what's been possible here. So let's go back over here. I'm going to go to, again, the troubleshoot, advanced options, firmware settings, and we're just going to reboot back into the firmware environment. And this should be pretty straightforward, not too complicated here. And again, if anybody has any questions regarding, any of these features or anything like that, feel free and ask and let me know. And if it's even something different, feel free. You can also go ahead and ask. I'm more than willing to try to see if I can answer any of your questions in that regard. So no worries. Okay. Okay. So now we are back in the UEFI environment, right? And let me make sure here. Yeah. So we're back in the UEFI. I'm going to head back over to Extreme Tweaker, and I can go back over here, and now you can see I'm going to select the secondary profile as opposed to the current profile. So our current profile is this 4800 megahertz at 32, 32, 32, but we're going to go with DDR5 6000 at 38, 38. And keep in mind that that 38, 38, 38 is still lower than the baseline frequency and timing. Excuse me, those timings are still lower than the timings that were at the base JEDEC values. So again, if we go back to our original frequency, it was 4800 megahertz at 40, 40, 40, right? So you can see right there that we're making the changes. We're going to make modifications to all those parameters for you, and we're also going to increase the memory voltage to 1.25, which is critical in terms of allowing us to have these higher levels. So let's go ahead and move that over here. So that's a really good question, Hexagon. So what is more beneficial, AEMP or XMP? It's not one is more beneficial than the other. They're both kind of similar. Our strategy here was to be able to, of course, support XMP because XMP is the industry standard. And as we probably see more maturity and more types of memory modules come to market, you'll probably not see the necessity for us to have the AEMP feature, but we think that probably for the kind of foreseeable future, AEMP will give you an alternate option at being able to get a great experience from the widest set of DDR5 modules, whether they are XMP enabled or not XMP enabled, right? So it's not a question that AEMP is better than XMP. It's just a question that it gives you a more choice and more flexibility regardless of which DDR5 that you purchase, right? So now you can see we've gone ahead and already posted. The motherboard has successfully posted, and we'll go into the operating system. But you can see right there, memory frequency, 6,000 megahertz. 6,000 megahertz. Our memory voltage has also been increased, and we can go ahead and check our corresponding timings. So we're going to drop down over here and go to DRAM timing control. And now you can see that our effective timings are 38, 38, 38. So that is, again, lower than the baseline 4800, 40, 40, 40, but 6,000 megahertz. So it was just that easy to be able to get 6,000 megahertz memory. So that's really, really awesome. And from a cost savings perspective, I will say that if you can get one of these kits, it's great because you don't have to buy 6,000 megahertz memory. Although keep in mind that 6,000 megahertz memory might be like RGB memory. So maybe you really want the RGB lighting effect. But if you really just care about performance, this is another option to, of course, keep in mind. And one other thing that I will let you guys note here is that a lot of users forget that we do have this, but we have a customable My Favorites screen. This is a really cool option where you can actually customize whatever shows up in this field. So an example right here is if I go to My Favorites, right, and I wanted to, let's say, delete everything, but I wanted to go in and just add in a specific thing. Like you notice where I was going to the DRAM timings, right? So you could go through and look for whatever specific value that you wanted. So I could see right here, DRAM timing, right? I can add that. And now you can see under My Favorites, I wouldn't have to go search for the DRAM timing control anymore, right? It's literally going to always be there. And I could populate this with whatever other values I want, fan controls, CPU voltages, multipliers, different settings. And I essentially don't have to keep navigating through the UEFI. I can literally just set all the key things that I want is the primary section of my UEFI environment. So it's a really useful feature. So let's go ahead and boot into Windows, and we will go from there. So let me just move back out right here. Definitely 6,000 megahertz. My goodness, I agree with that statement right there. So we are looking good, guys. So let me just go ahead and double check. So let me see if we got any other questions on Twitter or maybe on Facebook as we boot up into the operating system, although that boot is going to be pretty quick there. Okay, yeah, we're also looking pretty good here. I'm not seeing any questions that are coming up there. So, okay, so we can see that we have successfully also gone ahead and now booted into the operating system environment. And let's go ahead and open up our ASUS here as well. All right, and yep, we can see right there that we have now ASUS open. And we're going to go to our tools, CPU ID. And now we can also go ahead and see right there that, yes, we are effectively running 6,000 megahertz at 38, 38, 38. So higher frequency and lower timings. We bypass the PMIC voltage limitation. We're good to go. And again, if we wanted some nice benchmarks right there, we could go ahead and do that. I think I might have the benchmarks saved here from a previous run. So see here if I maybe have them. So let me see. This is, yeah, so this is our 6,000 megahertz run from our prior test here. And I think probably I've got the baseline. Yeah, so here you go. Here's essentially kind of your compare and contrast, right? So if we take a look right there, that's your bandwidth differential between the two. So we can see here at your standard essentially baseline, right? So this is our standard baseline of 4,800 megahertz at 40, 40, 40, right? You can see 76,000 right there, right? 69,000 and then 69,000, right? And then an effective 85 nanoseconds right there. And then we can see now when we moved over to 6,000 at 3838, right? We can see, of course, 95,000, 83,000, 85,000, and 70 nanoseconds. So overall a big improvement in terms of your overall latency as well as your overall bandwidth performance for that. And keep in mind that Ada64 is still fine tuning. I believe their memory benchmark, I think they're going to probably be coming out with the final version next week. That's going to be specifically more optimized and tuned fully for DDR5. So keep in mind that that's also why there's a little flagged warning down here. And it tells you that this has not been fully optimized yet. To be fully transparent there, just keep that in mind, okay? But you can see the value is going to be held right there, and you're good to go. And you could still even run a stress test on this, and it would be okay, and you'd be set, and you'd be good to go. But as always, though, it is important to keep in mind that when it comes to, of course, overclocking is never guaranteed. So you are essentially attempting to push and modify, something beyond its baseline level of operating performance. So the last thing I want to show you here is like, what would happen in a scenario if maybe you went to the profile 2, right? And you went to 6,000 megahertz and the system locked up and it didn't actually complete. Could AEMP still be beneficial? Yes, because we've still made other adjustments in terms of the timings and the voltage. It could just be maybe that memory divider is just a little bit, out of reach. Well, then what you could do is you could just take on that baseline of AEMP and make a slight modification to the DRAM divider by dropping it and then essentially going back into the operating system. So I will show you what that looks like here in a moment. But let me just see any questions right there. Looks like we got a question from Zach. Yeah, so overall, I definitely agree. It's a very impressive specification. So let's go and just show you here, lastly, what it would look like if we wanted to make an adjustment right here. So I'm going to go back to the Uefi. So we're going to go back into the Uefi, and again, here I've already gone ahead and showed you essentially the benefit of the ASUS Enhanced Memory Profile, both Profile 1 and Profile 2. So now the main thing I essentially just want to be able to show you guys is what would happen if we wanted to essentially use AEMP, but maybe we ran into an issue where AEMP wasn't stable, right? Because again, we are overclocking. And generally, the way that you would want to handle this would be pretty straightforward. Like I said, what you would want to do is enable that profile, and then if we had an issue essentially getting to the operating system, but the system posted, we would essentially just maybe want to try to drop the memory divider. And dropping the memory divider, you would generally want to go in increments, one increment, essentially below, to test, essentially see which memory divider would work in terms of stability. So we should be getting here into the Uefi in a moment. Okay, so we're back in the Uefi. So what would we do? Okay, so you can see right here, we loaded in the secondary profile, 6,000 megahertz, 38, 38, 38. What we could go ahead and do is just head over to the DRAM frequency, and you'll actually see that we've tried to make it a little bit easier for you. The values that are grayed out essentially mean that those are memory dividers that are optimally not suited for stability. So that is the reason why that they're grayed out. So we'll see right here that we have 6,000, right? And we'll see that directly below that 5,900 is grayed out. So we wouldn't want to use that memory divider. So we can see right here, the next two memory dividers would be 5867 or 5800 megahertz. If you wanted to be a little bit more conservative, then there's even 56. So again, remember, even still, 56 at 38, 38, 38 is still going to be better than the 4800 megahertz that we had at 40, 40, 40, right? So why not try it? So we could manually set that memory divider. We'd go to F10, and then we would hit OK, and we would see if the system would be able to go correspondingly post. And so that's generally how you would want to go through the process of essentially kind of testing out to see the strength of your memory controller on your CPU, which, like I said, is going to be somewhat variable. If the system was to post, then you would want to get in the operating system, and then you would want to run generally some form of a stress test, which again, you could use the included ASUS64. If you've got an RG series motherboard, you could download the trial and then purchase it. You could also use Intel XTU, which is free. You can download that directly from Intel's website, and it does have an integrated memory test built into it, which is a great option. So there are a few different ways. I also really like OCCT, which is another nice application, which is also available. It's free, but they also do have a paid license that you can purchase, which will help to support their development, right? So let's go ahead and check back over here, and we can actually already see the system, of course, is booting, but we'd expect it to keep booting because it already booted successfully and was working stably at 6,000 megahertz. So this is, of course, going to be easier, right? It's not going to be more difficult. So again, we would just go ahead and open up ASUS 64. Go to the tools, and then we could go ahead and verify, and we can see right there, yep, 5600 megahertz, 38, 38, 38. So that's it. Pretty straightforward, guys, right? Not too complicated. So, all right, guys, that wraps up our AEMP demo. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the system here. I think I'll go ahead and still maybe do a couple of builder spotlights, and we will wrap things up, guys. So let me go ahead and just shut down the system here. If anybody has any questions on the AEMP stuff side, feel free to go ahead and ask, and I'm going to see if I can get together a couple of the builds here for our PCDIY Builder Spotlight, and we'll get ready to wrap things up. So give me 1 second there to just shut that system down. All right. Okay, very cool. So let me see here if I can bring up there we go. Okay. And let's see here. Okay, all right. So it looks like we've got a good number of submissions here. So let's go ahead and pull a couple of these up here. And just give me a second to download actually the images here, guys, so I can show these to you for our PCDIY Builder Spotlight. And looks like our first one is going to be Blue Frost. I think it's going to be the name of the system here. And this is going to be, what do we have here? Oh, cool. This is from Soren. All right. So from Nordic 3D, of course, everybody knows, one of my absolute favorite builders in the game. Let's go ahead and bring up his system right here. Download our images here. All right. Okay, very cool. So we got everything downloaded here, and let's go ahead and load this guy up. Hey, Mike, no problem. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day, and you have a good weekend, okay? Thanks so much for joining us here on the stream. All right, so let's load up some images here. Okay, so we got our first system, and let's see what we've got right here. All right, so right off the bat, we've got, we can see here, actually, this looks like a Prime Series motherboard. I love seeing the Prime Series motherboards. They've got this beautiful, clean, white, stylized aesthetic right here. Love, actually, it looks like we've got soft tubing right here, which I'm a big fan of. I like soft tubing generally more than hard line tubing, just because I think it's got a little bit more kind of curve and kind of roundness to it, which I think is interesting from just the visual aesthetic. Got some beautiful T4 space memory here in the white edition. Looks like some RGB cables right there. But of course, with this being Nordic 3D, it's going to be water cooled, and we can tell that already. We've got, of course, some nice, looks like some block integration right here, and then we've got a wide shot right there. So very, very interesting right here. So I like this kind of split design here, where we can see we've got going from the CPU block, an EK block, going out to our actual rad distro kind of setup right here, horizontally oriented GPU, which is nice because it gives us a little bit of depth and contrast down here. I like the nice addition right there of the RGB based SSD. And then, of course, just a really nice clean level of kind of lighting throughout, not super overpowered with that blue, the white, and then, of course, some silver accents, and then even a little bit of black from some of the other components give some contrast right here. But overall, super clean. But I wouldn't expect anything less from Nordic 3D, one of the absolute best builders in the game when it comes to just, I think, color theory and really clean, nice layouts. And of course, beautiful photography helps. This is probably, I think, one of the best images right here that just gives you a sense of how everything is laid out. Really nice and clean. And also, I think the important part here is that we can see that there's a lot of room that has been given to allow the components to breathe, right? So we can see here that we've got visibility for the shroud right here, even the VRM heat sinks. We can see this primary M.2 right there. And then you even still see some of that kind of bottom portion right there is horizontally. It's fleshed out a bit more with some depth and contrast because we don't have a vertical kind of setup that would just eat away this whole thing with just one flat block, right? And then I love just this kind of soft blue, translucent blue glow, translucent blue glow that we have going on there. Those fittings really complement the overall build too as well. And of course, we can also see that the block has a really, really nice, of course, backplate in there, which is complementary to everything else. Overall, very, very clean, very nicely done. Beautiful build here. But again, I wouldn't expect anything less from from Nordic 3D. So let's go ahead and take a look here through the builder submission form and see what we got going on. So does the system have a theme? Yep, blue and white. Clean, bold, and cold are three words that describe the build here. Blue Frost is the name of the system. I definitely would agree. As far as the name of the system, I think it's very complimentary to it. And let's see, core hardware that we've got right here. This is using a Core i7 11700K on a Prime Z490-A motherboard. -A, one of my absolute favorite series. This is right here, a -A. This is the Z690-A board. Beautiful looking board right there. If you guys can see right there, that's just the newer version of it. Some Team Group Team Force Extreme White Edition memory right there. Water cooled graphics card. It's an RTX 3080, and then it looks like a Samsung 970 500 gigabyte NVMe M.2 base SSD, and then an 860 watt PSU, all in an O11, along with some Unifans in there, and then EK hardware throughout with the Coolstream PE, Coolstream XE, and then also looks like the Kinetic Flow 360 DDC that we have in there, and then Quantum Magnitude he's got for the CPU block, right? About $4,700 for the over total cost of the build. Most proud of the long curve bends that he's got in there. I think that they look great. Is there anything that he would change? Overall, he's pretty happy with everything, maybe even a little bit faster GPU. Took about 3 weeks of building time, 4 months all the way around, though, in terms of getting all the components. It was a customer's based request in terms of the overall build. And overall, his kind of favorite aspect here in terms of the ASUS hardware was the design aesthetic that the Prime board kind of laid the foundation for with this white and blue theme. Overall, a beautiful build, man. Kudos. Love the way it looks. I think this turned out really, really nice. Very, very nice job. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at our next build here. All right, next one here is going to be, hold on, let me actually, give me 1 second here. And get this loaded up 1 second, guys. Leave this loaded here for a moment while I get our other, hold on, while I get this up and running here. So we'll leave that image there, and I'm just going to go and load our next build in here, which is going to be from Bejan. I believe Bejan is the name of the builder, so hopefully I'm getting that right there. And download your images right here. And this is also going to be a cool build. All right. So let's see what we've got here, guys. Oh, very cool. This is it's got actually a whole setup here. And this looks like I'm gonna like this because this is very different, right? We go from actually having a system that was kind of all lit up in terms of RGB lighting, and here we're going to go to far less RGB lighting, and also moving away from kind of the 011, which has been such a popular chassis, to an entirely different kind of look and feel, which I always appreciate when we have somebody that kind of bucks the trend a little bit and just kind of goes with a different vibe in terms of their kind of system. So that's always nice to see. So let's see what we've got here. And I'm going to go ahead and what's the name for our build right here? This is going to be the silent dark one is the name for this system right here. Okay. And this is again by Bajan, I believe. So let's go ahead and take a look at your build. Okay, we got it loaded up there. Okay, so we can see right off the bat, what do we got going on here? This is with a TUF Gaming setup. It looks like we've got a TUF Gaming board in there, and we also have an actual TUF Gaming graphics card. I love that we've got a traditional tower heatsink in here. Looks like we've got some Kingston HyperX Fury memory in there, which this is the RGB-based memory. But overall, we can see definitely this is going to be a cleaner base build in terms of kind of the lighting, because we can see from the fans, we also have Be Quiet fans in there. So we've got some really nice quality fans in terms of the overall thermal characteristics, not only in terms of their airflow performance, but also in terms of their acoustics. So we can see lit up here. It's not going to be super crazy, right? We've just got a little bit of accent lighting right there on the TUF Gaming graphics card, and a little bit of lighting right there on the actual memory, which is nice. Gives us just a little bit of pop, but overall fits really nicely into the system. Just this is a system that you can tell is focused on performance, stability, reliability, getting the job done, and it's going to be quiet and well cooled. And I definitely appreciate that type of build. This is definitely actually in a lot of ways my type of build. Nice job in terms of kind of getting all the cable management back there. Kind of got it all out of mind, so that you don't have to worry about anything causing any obstruction with any kind of airflow portions right there. So that's overall pretty nicely done. You can see right there that nice back plate. Of course, got the memory nice all lit up there and synchronized with a nice kind of little, looks like orange or TUF Gaming yellow, could be, depends. Either one of those colors is sometimes a little bit tricky when it comes to kind of assessing them through photos. Nice cable management right there too on the PCI Express power connectors. Yeah. Cable management nicely done here on the back. Kudos to him, including the actual cable management for the back of the system as well. It's always nice to see. Very cool. So it looks like we've got a couple of drives. Nicely, everything's kind of split out, nicely taped down, very cleanly done. Looks like we also got some other drives down here as well. And then there with our tempered glass side panel on, and then our front lighting on there. Nicely done. And then our whole setup right there. He's got it down there at the bottom right. But overall, hey, that works. It's a cool looking system. I like it. Clean, well executed, definitely focused on, I think, being effectively cooled, right? Quiet in terms of operation, but still high performance right here. So let's go ahead and take a look here at his submission form. So not his first build. Does it have a theme? Not exactly. I just love the black and orange color combo. 3 words to describe the build: tough, quiet, and dark. The silent dark one is the name for his system right here, right? So actually, I think I've got a banner that I put right there. Yep. Okay. Let's see. In terms of core hardware, we've got a Be Quiet Pure Base. It's a 500DX. Also, a Be Quiet power supply, straight 11 gold, 750 watts. He's got a TUF Gaming B550M Plus. So M actually means it's a micro ATX based motherboard. He's got the Wi-Fi based model on there, a Ryzen 5 3600 in there. And then he's also running that with the Dark Rock Slim Pro CPU cooler, version 2 in there with Silent Wings 3. He's got an RTX 3070, of course, TUF Gaming version on there. And then a Kingston Fury RGB memory. Looks like he's got 16 gigabytes in there. And then he's got a few different drives there for SSDs. So he's got a 1 terabyte NVMe, a PCIe NVMe M.2, and then another 500 gigabyte PCIe NVMe drive, and then 3 different mechanical drives. So we did actually see, I was correct when I saw on the barrel there that he's got actually a 2.5-inch, 1 terabyte laptop size hard drive, right? 2.5-inch. And then he's got a 2 terabyte, 3.5-inch a mechanical hard drive, and then a 3 terabyte mechanical hard drive. Overall, that's all connected actually to a TV, which he uses as his primary monitor. And then also that is connected to a sound bar for his actual audio. That's interesting. So about $2,500 for his build. He's most proud that he was able to kind of get everything nailed in terms of the overall kind of color theme, with everything predominantly being pretty much black. As far as what he would like to change, maybe upgrade a fingerprint sensor. That's easy. He could do that with a USB drive, right? Where he could just get an actual USB flash drive that actually has biometric read access to it, and he'd be good to go. Maybe he'd like to upgrade to a Ryzen 5000 series CPU, so something like in the 5900 class. Even go with the higher end GPU, like a 3080 Ti. And also maybe change the RAM as well. But overall, he's pretty happy with most of the system configuration. But he also would maybe want to go to a bigger based SSDs, because the mechanical hard drives do make noise. And that's definitely one of the things, is that vertically mounted like that, probably also on the back, you're getting a little bit more vibration, where those drives probably work best in terms of absorbing vibration on the inside as opposed to the outside. So that is something to kind of keep in mind. Took him about 2 years altogether to get everything all together in terms of the hardware. Predominantly uses it for browsing the web, Netflix, watching some movies online, photo editing, a little bit of office work and 3D design, and then gaming like Red Dead Redemption, City Skylines, CSGO, Cyberpunk, and Forza. So Forza, definitely very cool, along with Cyberpunk. And he's a big fan of just the overall TUF components themselves in terms of their look and their feel, as well as the quality. So overall, very, very cool build, man. I like it. Clean, simple, not overcomplicated, and well done. How do you submit? Pretty straightforward, man. Just head over to the PCDIY Facebook group. It's linked in the description. I can go ahead and drop a link as well. And if you're interested in submitting, all you got to do is pretty much just submit the form and upload your pictures, and you can be featured on the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. So it's not too complicated of a process. And I can go ahead and I'll leave the link there in a moment. Actually, if anybody is there in the group right now, if they can drop a link there, that would be great for me. If not, I'll get it in there in a second. But let me go ahead and just get up our next submission right here. We'll probably do 1 or 2 more submissions, guys. All right, I've got the link for the group here. Just head over here. Hey, GP, happy to have you here, man. Thanks for joining us here on the stream. So while I go ahead and download these images, guys, I'm just going to leave our setup here for the silent dark one again. And while I go ahead and download our images here for our next builder. So this is going to be from, I believe, Esteban. So let me go ahead and get Esteban's images loaded up here. Looks like Esteban actually got some video for us too. Okay. Oh, very cool. So Esteban's got a mini ITX base build and a legitimate small form factor build here too. It's always nice to see small form factor builds. They're definitely some of the most challenging systems that you can put together, just because you do not have that much space. So anybody that's willing to put in the time and effort to put together a small form factor build always gets my thumbs up. So it's definitely a work in progress when you can actually get it all kind of completed. So okay, so let's bring up his system here. What do we have here for the name? Does not have a name, so I'm just going to put. All right, let's go ahead and just put his name. This is Esteban's RG SSF PC. Yep. All right. Okay, guys, so let's take a look here, and I will show you the videos, I guess, afterwards here. All right, so we can see right here, this looks like it's in the Cooler Master and R series, right? It's very popular. Looks like he's got there the vented side panel on there to give you a little bit of increased airflow, and that's looking good. Let's see our next image right here. Oh, and there we got it without the side panel. So clean and well executed. Definitely a challenge when you're talking about these smaller form factor systems. We can see that we've got, of course, fans that are in there. I think those are slim fans, right? Of course, we're going to have a mini ITX board. And then he's got vertically mounted, of course, graphics card, which is complementary to this type of chassis design as well. But overall, very impressive considering how much you have packed in there when it comes to the hardware, right? So overall, nicely done. We can see right there, of course, that's where the PSU is. There's the DRAM. There's the board. There's the cooler, right? And of course, here's the graphics card. There's our fans. But overall, very nicely done in terms of the overall cable management. Impressive in terms of that regard. So let me go ahead and see what we've got here in terms of some of his video that he went ahead and supplied. And let me see if I can bring this video up here. Oh, it looks like it's in a different format, guys. I don't have VLC installed in here, but let me see if I can get it installed quickly so we can actually show you, because I'd like to be able to show what Esteban did here. So let me see if I can get it quickly installed so that I can show you this, guys. And I will just go ahead and run through his builder spotlight form here in the interim. So let's see. So in terms of the build, it's not his first build. And you see here, excuse me, not his first build. He didn't have a specific theme. 3 words to describe the build is elegant, small, and powerful. It is an NR200P Max. In terms of core hardware, he's got an ROG B550-I board in there, 5600X, and then an ROG Strix RTX 3070 Ti, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and a 1 terabyte PCIe NVMe SSD, all packed in there. About $2,500 in terms of the cost of the build. He's most just proud of just how clean and elegant the build came out, and I would definitely agree. It's also, he's proud of that it's cool. I think it's not only, it looks like it's actually well cooled, but also just, of course, aesthetically cool. Anything they would change about it? No, he's really happy with the build. Took him about 2 hours, which is definitely impressive for a small form factor build. Predominantly uses it for gaming, and his favorite aspect about ASUS hardware is its overall durability and reliability. So overall, very cool there. Kudos, Esteban. And looks like I was able to get the VLC installed here. So hopefully I can show here. Yep, I can show some video off here for you. So let me load up the video here and I will show you guys. So give me 1 second. And let me load up this video here so you guys can take a look at his system in effect, because it definitely looks even cooler with some video in play. All right, here we go. So here we can see we've got a video for his system. It's got a very cool kind of lighting effect right there that looks really nice. Overall, it's got a cool, clean lighting effect right there that you can see really comes off. And you even still get a little bit of the RGB light bar that's out there. And of course, that gives a little bit of spilled diffusion lighting that we can see that's coming in through the fan blades, which is kind of cool. So it's got definitely a cool vibe to it right there. Let's see if, I think we've got one other video that right here that he shared with us. So let me see if I can bring that one up. Yep, he's got one other one right here. So let me bring that up for you guys. Pretty cool, pretty cool. So overall, Esteban, you get a thumbs up, man. Nicely done. It's a clean, well done build. And I will say overall, just from the fact that you were able to put all that hardware in there, overall, nice job in terms of just being able to pack in all the hardware in there in a clean, well kind of thought out fashion to where you don't have just cables kind of just branching out everywhere. That can definitely be a challenge in these smaller form factor builds. Hey, so he thinks missing some modded extension cables. Where do you say that for the Silent Dark one? Was that for the Be Quiet system or for this one right here for the small form factor gaming build? Hey, Kevin, no, this actual stream is right now happening live on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. So it's on all 3 platforms currently. Thanks, Mike, for sharing actually the form. Appreciate that. So we're going to go with one last build, guys, here, and we're going to wrap up our stream after this build. So let me go ahead and just get this downloaded right here, and we will be good to go. So give me 1 second. And I think it's from Kevin. Yep, this is Kevin's micro ATX based build here, which is kind of cool. We don't usually see micro ATX builds that often. The reality is that micro ATX from kind of just a segmentation standpoint is not as popular as ATX. ATX is really where the vast majority of the market is. That's what most users tend to prefer just because from cost, feature set, you know, overall kind of ease of use in terms of kind of just laying everything out. It's just a simpler and easier platform to work on. But it is always nice to see when we do get some micro ATX based builds in here. So let's load it up and get it up here. All right, cool. So let's see what we got going on from Kevin. And I got his submission form up here. Does his system have a name here? I think this was for his brother, if I remember right. Little brother, that's the name of the system. All right, I like it. I like it. Let's go with that. Little brother by Kevin. All right. Okay, so here we go. This is little brother from Kevin. We can see right here, we've got, of course, micro ATX. This looks like a Prime Series motherboard. It looks like a Cooler Master Hyper 212, and then we've got an ROG Strix. This could be a 10 or 20 series based graphics card. I think he repurposed the PSU from his other system that he had, so that's the reason why it's such a higher end PSU. Of course, for this system configuration, you could comfortably run this with like a 650 watt. 550 watt wouldn't be a problem, but of course, you're definitely not going to have a limiting factor here with the 1200 watt that's in there. And this all looks like it's a fractal designs chassis, but we'll see here in a little bit right here as far as the core specifications. But overall, clean, well laid out. Nothing to really complain about here, man. It's a nice, clean looking, compact build. And there we got it with the side panel on. We got a little bit of that lighting and play, of course, from the GPU that's in there, which looks good. And definitely this is going to be a nice, really solid performing system, right? And again, it's going to be nice and compact, in terms of that micro ATX form factor, but still not compromising on its overall performance or kind of the key features that it has, which is nice to see. Oh, and it's cool. It's got like its own little stand, which is kind of cool. Oh, yeah, and there we go. That's actually, yeah, it's a Prime B560 M-A board. Perfect. That's a great kind of if you just want a turn keyboard, it's going to be stable, reliable, it's going to work, right? You don't need necessarily all these kind of specialized features and functions. That's a really solid option to go with. I like it. Let's go ahead and take a look here at his submission form and see what we've got going on here. So, of course, we know it's not his first build. He's got an awesome full kind of RG setup from top to bottom with monitors, peripherals, Helios, and a whole lot more that's on there. It's awesome. You can check that on one of the other previous live streams. So this one, I think, though, as I noted, was for his little brother, which is hence why it's called Little Brother. 3 words to describe the build: compact, ASUS, and simple. Name of the build is his little brother. And then in terms of core hardware, we've got a Core i7 11700. That's great in terms of giving us a CPU that's going to be fast, responsive, and really be a great, solid, quote unquote, gaming system, right? Without necessarily focus on having to have an overclock enabled part or anything like that. Well complemented with a B560A-M board. He's got 16 gigabytes of memory in there. GTX 1080, which is still very, very solid GPU for pretty much any game, especially if you're going to be running, 1080p at high settings and even 1440p in some games, definitely is possible, right? Hyper 212 in terms of the cooler keeps things nice and cool and quiet. That's actually running in a Corsair Carbide chassis, the 88R, and then he's running an Intel SSD, PCIe NVMe 2 terabyte, 750 gigabyte HDD in there as well. And then looks like he's also running a TUF Gaming monitor, the VG259QM, which is an ultra high refresh rate monitor. So that's also a nice touch in there. Overall, that's a really nice system. I recommend a lot of times like bang to the buck, quote unquote, gaming builds when users are looking for kind of a CPU recommendation and board, that the series chipset with something like a 10400F is a really, really strong pairing. This is very similar to that, but maybe bumped up a little bit in terms of even giving you more performance. But you can see overall cost here was $1,200 for him that they spent. Aspect that he's most proud of, uses the micro ATX form factor. He added some RGB. Is there anything that he would change? He would add some RGB lights, and if he could be able to get one, an ASUS RTX 30 series base graphics card. Took him about 3 hours to put together the system, and predominantly uses it for Halo Infinite, Battlefield 4, and Warframe. And his favorite feature is ASUS Fan Connect. He loves just the extra fan headers, allow the chassis to use the fans and one kind of point of contact, right? And what he's referring to there is that our higher end graphics cards in that series, they actually had fan headers on the graphics card, which allowed you to go ahead and connect things like chassis fans, which would be nice if you wanted to have your fans respond to the GPU temperature. Overall, cool build, Kevin. Gets a thumbs up from me, man. Nicely done. All right. So overall, oh yeah, there we go. It looks like Kevin joined us here. I love building micro ATX PCs. All my brother does is play games and schoolwork, so he doesn't need a lot of extra features. And I think he nailed it on the head, right? I mean, still here, he's got high-speed USB, he's got PCIe storage, a faster responsive processor, a very capable graphics card, more than enough power to keep everything stable and reliable. So this is a great balance of not necessarily have to go overboard, but still have a system that really is quote-unquote not a slouch. This is going to be a very capable system, stable and reliable, and give you a great gaming experience. And it was also going to give you just a general great quote unquote daily driver system, right? That you can use for, you know, pretty much anything. You're going to get a really nice experience from. And it being a modern architecture, it's also going to be really responsive. And being a new chipset and platform, you know, you have full support, of course, right now for Windows 10, and also you can do Windows 11 if you wanted to. So overall, I think a great platform to be able to develop on and be able to start, you know, his journey in terms of PC DIY, man. So kudos and a thumbs up. So all the way around, guys, that wraps up our stream. Hopefully you guys found it interesting and insightful, and hopefully you guys like that demo on the new AEMP function. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, whatever they might be, feel free to go ahead and drop in the comments wherever you're checking us out, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. And if you want to check out more, right, or find out more, or get some insights, get some tips, get some tricks, get some products recommendations, whatever it might be, make sure to join our PCDIY Facebook group. It's linked in the description. It's also linked in the chat. I'd love to see you guys there. So with that, guys, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day, and best of luck with your guys' builds. Have a good weekend.